Hello and welcome to Consciously Awesome Living. I am your host, Sheila Applegate, manifestation life coach and the creator of the Consciously Awesome Adventures in Manifesting. And we have been talking this season about helping you to design your most brilliant life, the one that you dream of, desire, and deserve. So let's get into this. And this one is an important conversation I want to have with you. And it's about compassion in manifesting because we've been talking about all the different levels, embracing emotions, upgrading our beliefs, and really we've been talking about it on a personal level. Really, you choosing your most brilliant, beautiful life. And no one knows what your perfect life is. You may not even know, right? But you may have some milestones that you want to hit or some ideas of what inspire you, make you feel good and creative. But when we kind of bring the concept of manifesting into a mainstream conversation and just sort of simplify it, which sometimes we need to do in order to help get the word out, help people make some changes. But there's some pitfalls in that. And I want to talk about the pitfalls because we don't want to be a part of, we don't want to fall into a pitfall. We don't want to fall into a pit, and we don't want to nudge anyone into a pit, right? We want to bring everyone around along with us and help everyone around us to feel inspired and beautiful and brilliant, because the more happy people there are in the world, the better the world will be, right? So there's a few things that I've noticed that I just want to help us to look at. And I think it'll just be just thinking about it, just looking at it will help us to make some shifts in our life. One of the first things that I want to talk about is struggle doesn't mean that you have lessons to learn. There's a lot of beliefs in many different cultures and many different religions that if something isn't going right, or we don't feel like something's going right in our life, that if we learn the lesson, it'll go away. That's the philosophy that, like, Earth is a school. I happen to think that Earth is a playground, not a school. And that changes everything, right? Because if we're constantly having to learn lessons in order to achieve that life that we want, then what does that mean if something bad goes wrong, right? Is it your fault? Are you projecting that onto someone, that if we go around saying, oh, well, there's a lesson, learn your lesson, and then life is great? What about the person who is suffering from cancer and really trying their hardest to overcome it, or someone who knows that they're dying and is looking to process that and to be okay with it? What about someone living in poverty who keeps trying to get a job and nothing changes for them, even though they're brilliant at what they do? Or maybe they never had a chance to have a good education because of something in their life. And so they aren't skilled in a way that would help provide for them. These things are not, they're not things that we want to judge ourselves or anyone else for. And I think that a lot of times people who are looking to manifest the life of their dreams, create it, and talking about things in this positive way, sometimes forget to have compassion for themselves and for other people. Compassion for ourselves is important because if things are always a lesson and something goes bad, that idea of, well, why do bad things happen to good people? Um, if we are thinking we control everything, right? We can manifest whatever we want and we're creating the life, then we're responsible for it. Now, being responsible for it is a good thing in some ways, right? We're responsible that things happen to us, and we want to take actions that will help steer things in the direction that we would like. But sometimes there's life events that being responsible is very weighted and it feels very difficult for us or for someone in our life. And so I just want us all to be aware, first for the compassion for ourselves and then compassion when we're talking about this. So I would never want to be, talking about all this to to all of you out there and have that kind of ripple out into some form of judgment on yourself or on someone else. So let's look at that a little bit more. And I want you to realize that you are already a whole and complete reflection of divine source on earth. There is nothing you have to do. There's nothing you have to learn to make that true. Whatever your belief system is, whether you believe in energy as a source or a divinity, God, you are whole and complete as you are. All you have to do is to remember that. You don't have to you don't even have to remember it. It's true whether you remember it or not. But when you remember it, you will feel more comfort and more understanding. And when you navigate from that level, now it isn't always about having to figure out what you're doing wrong so that you can fix it. And I can understand why it feels good to sometimes have those set of rules, right? Because if it's something we have to learn, if our broken arm symbolizes that we need to lift something up and we weren't doing it, that was not one of them. I know a lot of the symbols of the body, and that wasn't one, but that's what I picked. Knees are supposed to mean difficulty in childhood and past life. So let's take those. If we have knee injuries, we could go back and look at our childhood and try to overcome things. It's going to make us feel good because now we have a way to fix it if we couldn't fix it from the doctor or whatever way, right? Like if medical attention wasn't helping, whatever, we could fix it and that would make us feel good. Now, what if you go back and you clear everything and it's still happening? What does that mean? We're going to talk about that. It does not mean that it's your fault, and it does not mean that you are not whole, and it does not mean that you need to learn a lesson to deserve healing. All right. What it means is that life is flowing through you, and the experience that you're having is the experience that is a gift for you. Now, that even could sound bad, but I do believe that the universe is conspiring on our behalf. I talked about emotions we like to categorize as good or bad, but life itself, we also categorize events as good or bad, situations as good or bad. And when we do that, we limit the potential for what can unfold, because in that part of us that is beyond human, we really don't see things as good or bad. This whole life experience is a playground. It's just this opportunity to experience physicality and emotions, the five senses, relationships. These are all the wonders of earth that we often forget when we're in this human form. Our souls forget that. But when we remember and we understand that nothing is bad, there's some things that are more pleasant than others. But a lot of times when we're going through the difficult times of life, that's when it's also filled with a lot of miracles. And we may not understand all of the beauty of what is happening during that time until many years later. So we can't always figure it out in the moment. And in that moment, we have to just remember this is what's happening. I'll understand it better in the future. But we do still have some power in this because we have the ability to view it from a different perspective, right? We can choose whether we want to think of whatever's happening to us, with us, for us as bad, or if we think of it as something that we are moving through. We can focus on the pain, or we can focus on the beauty of the people that are maybe coming to support us. And if we don't feel supported, we may have to look to something else. The sun that came up and looked brilliant in the sky today. So we can shift our perspective while still navigating something that's not comfortable. We talked about embracing all of our emotions. The more we get used to our emotions in every situation, then when difficult times come, we can navigate them, understand them, and not feel as overwhelmed. And maybe in that space, we can receive the support and help that we desire. So, as we're talking about this, it's very important to remember that, yes, we're co creating. We are creating with something that is outside of ourselves. It's an energy, it's a force. We talked about that before. Like, do you believe in soul and spirit? If you're looking to create and to manifest, there has to be something outside, some energy that you're dancing with in order to do that. We talk about the frequency, right? So there's something beyond our physicality that is allowing us to draw things to us. And sometimes in difficult times, it's going to be just a little moment of trying to see the beauty in the moment until the next thing happens and the next things, and to focus on the moments that are good. But that does not good. I just did it too. That's so how ingrained it is in our thinking that even as I'm talking to you about not separating good and bad, I use it to explain it. So that goes to show you how ingrained we are in the society to think in those terms. But when we're moving through more difficult times, finding those little bright spots and experiencing those will help us to feel more empowered and to move into a place where we're not feeling as much like a victim and we're not blaming ourselves. If you are someone who loves to manifest and you have great experiences with it, look around you, be conscious of the people around you, be compassionate when you talk about it. And that's not to say that you should suppress it. No, because you're a witness to other people, and that's a beautiful thing. But we want to include empathy and compassion when we are sharing that with the world. And we want to help embrace people in finding those beautiful moments, even in the difficult times. Then we have the idea that punishment, punishment. So I talked about lessons, but punishment is also embedded in some of our belief systems that have been passed down through the generations. Now, we're keeping it alive. There's punishment of like a punishing God or a force of nature that is against us. There's that idea of sinning, and therefore you have bad things happen to you. Now, I think that in theology, the idea is to say, to teach people, well, these things happen, but when you connect with the divine, you can be free of feeling that responsibility. That's the forgiveness, right? But it can get a little twisted and convoluted here, right? Because then we're self-punishing ourselves. We feel like we are not good enough. We don't deserve the good things, and we get down that path. I talked last week about how I can almost manipulate rolling dice or looking for word searches by where I put my thinking. And if it's in negative thoughts and thinking about how bad I'm going to roll, I will roll a bad roll of dice. which should be completely random. And yet our frequencies are always dancing with the space around us. So if we're thinking that we're to blame or that we feel worthless, um, as a sinner, whatever your language is, and isolated, that can make things a lot more difficult than the situation is. So what we take whatever is in front of us and we add that to it, and suddenly things are amplified. And so I would love for you, if there's any indoctrination in you from the world, which there is. I just said good and bad in the middle of describing this, right? Our schools have a punishment and a reward system. Many of the workplaces do. Like our whole money system, all of this is teaching us a punish and reward system that makes us think that we are only able to have good things happen to us when we have completed a certain amount of good, I guess, is what we think. And if we do bad, we get punished, right? I mean, that's the simplified form when we get into that thinking, and we want to move past that and to acknowledge that we are worthy. That's what I keep telling you. You are worthy in every moment to have divine, beautiful abundance, joy. And so that willingness to open it up without having to do something first. Um, because you deserve it. You deserve it. And you deserve it just because you are human. You deserve it just because you want it. You deserve it because you are on this earth creating with the divine in the way that everybody is creating. And we all have the potential. So when we get back from the break, I'm going to tell you, we're going to just talk about how maybe we can move out of those thought patterns when they catch us. I'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning in to Beauty and Gratitude with D'Angelo Thompson. That's me. We're going to focus on beauty from the inside out and gratitude being the cornerstone of your life. I will have amazing guests from all walks of life, from wellness experts to beauty, tech, fashion, you name it, they will be here. And we have amazing names coming up in the near future. So tune in every 2 weeks, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Soulivity TV or Soulivity Magazine. Thank each of you for watching, and focus on life, focus on gratitude. Thank you.
All right, welcome back. We have been talking about how you are worthy and beautiful and brilliant just as you are. And life is not a school, but rather a playground to explore the different experiences. And the more comfortable we get with all the different emotions, the more we'll enjoy all the experiences, right? But when we talked about the fact that you don't have to learn, you don't have to um, be indebted in order to create the life that you desire, that does not mean that you can't grow in every situation, because you can. You can clear emotions and you can shift your perspective. You can open up the blocks and allow the harmony to come in and notice the shifts. Then notice the people that you're attracting. Maybe people around you is such a habit to focus on the things that are making them unhappy that you just do that by default. I've done that with Zach. Zach and I both have autoimmune disorders. And so we can have like a pain here and a pain there. And we can get in cycles where we start talking about our pain to the other person. And then that person shares theirs and it becomes the topic. And then we'll be like, nah, we need to stop talking about pain now and move on. We don't need to put the attention on it because it just draws us more into the thinking, the awareness of it, versus when we shift our attention, we don't feel the pain as much. We let the vibrance back in. So that's a way of thinking, like, who's around me? And maybe I need to change the way I talk to people. What I learned is that intimacy is often based on struggle and survival. We come together, it's a hero's journey. We come together in a struggle, we feel close. So look at the relationships around you and see if you can tweak the conversation a little bit to be the one that brings in the joy, or to attract people who speak more about the positive things in life. We're going to talk about different ways you can just move yourself a little over over the edge of feeling difficult and move into the feeling of the ease and joy. And Brian reminded me recently that Brian, our amazing producer, reminded me recently about sin and how sin is actually an archery term, that it means you missed the mark, right? That's all it means. So maybe you were right on the edge of the center but just a little off, and you need to get a little bit more in. It's just a tweaking, a moving. You have endless arrows that you can throw, endless opportunities to just get on the mark a little bit more. So we can always shift our perspective and move a little closer to that joy flow that is within us. And when we do that, when we notice and we open up those spaces, then we can start to see how things can fill us in a more beautiful, vibrant way. And then if we're doing this for a friend, maybe we're in a good space, but we're noticing a friend is struggling. You don't need to abandon that friend because they're struggling, or tell them, hey, life is wonderful, great. Just help them move the mark a little bit, meet them where they are and help them to move to seeing just a little bit of sunlight and then a little bit more, because we're all in this together. So let's talk about some steps that we can take, that you can take, to help you move that mark and move into a space of seeing the positive around you, drawing more and more of that in. Because the more time you spend in that positive, really at the core positive energy, not that I'm pretending I'm going to push away any negative thoughts. I'm going to just only think of good, and I'm not going to look at what's actually going on in front of me that feels kind of hard. We don't want to do that. We want to notice, see, experience, but then also let more sunlight in, let more joy in, let more joy in to each moment. And some of the things you want to do if you find yourself in this position is, we're going to go back to one of the first episodes, upgrade those influential beliefs. If you're struggling, if things just seem to be going off course, then that means that you've probably come up to a belief that needs an upgrade. Maybe that's a belief that you're not worthy. Maybe it's a belief things have to be done certain ways. Maybe it's one of the subtle beliefs. Go back to that episode, review it, and see if you can find a belief that might need to be upgraded. Tune into those emotions, like we talked about, feel them. Give yourself a whole day to have a crappy day. Savor the yuck. I do that. I do that. Whether it's a grieving that I want to give over to, or an anger, or maybe it's nothing. You know, kids wake up sometime and they just have yucky days, yucky moods, and they let themselves have them until they don't. And so when you give yourself over to whatever you're feeling and don't try to just think about the positive, I know that sounds contradictory, but in order to get to the positive, we need to face what's in front of us. So if you're having a yucky day, give yourself all of it. And, try not to be rude to people if you can, but give yourself over to the yuck until it goes away. You can call on divine energies to make that easier. You can meditate in order to dissolve it. You don't have to let it play out for weeks or months, but when you give yourself over to it, when you get bored of that feeling, move into meditation and let that just release it. And so meditation, obviously, that's when I'm always encouraging you to do. But a gratitude journal is also a really good idea in these situations, because when we're looking at pain, it's hard to think about all the things we're grateful for. So if you commit yourself to writing down, even if it's, I'm grateful that there was the last tea bag was in the cupboard and I found it and fallen down and I got to have my tea when I thought I was all out. It can be that minute. But write it down, enjoy it, and feel gratitude. Gratitude will move mountains. Help somebody else. Because when we're feeling really, really down at the bottom of the pond, we kind of, maybe we think, oh, I wish someone would help us, but maybe we have blocks up and we're not actually letting that help in. If we turn our attention and find someone we can help, it doesn't mean that they have it worse off than us. They can have it, be doing great, but find something we can do to help somebody else, whoever that is. Just smiling at someone might be helping someone have a good day. If you shift your attention to that, you will allow yourself to shift from that feeling of victimization that can come up inside of us to a feeling of power and empowerment. And then that will amplify. Again, we're just moving the mark, and that will allow the amplification, the extension to occur, and the floodgates to start coming. Maybe like a trickle at first, but it'll build up. And then there's also acting as if. That is, if anyone's in 12 steps, you may know that that's one of the 12 steps. You act as if, or fake it till you make it. It's not a 12 step, it's a phrase. But that fake it till you make it is one way of saying it. I like to say act as if. I talked to you before about how Justin helped to create this home that we live in, and with the apple trees in the backyard. That was a couple episodes ago. But one of the things I didn't say is that when we were purchasing the home, there were obstacles, and it seems so right. It had to be right. It had the apple trees, right? But there were obstacles. And during that time when there were obstacles, they had a swing set here when we moved in, but no swings on it. So I took the kids and we went out and we bought a swing to go on the swing set in the yard we did not yet own, but we acted as if we were. We invested in that knowing. We did a physical act to help us believe that. And then we put the swing up when we got the house later. So those are some ways that you can experience that shifting away from difficult times into the flow of energy and abundance that is here for you. And no matter who you are, no matter how great things go, we all fall into this at some point. And these tools are great to turn to. So focus on that this week as you're moving your mark, and we will dive deeper into the power of gratitude next week. If you are interested in learning more about how to find yourself in full harmony and alignment with your physical, emotional, and spiritual body, check out SheilaApplegate.com, and you can see how I can work with you. And make a note that we do have a Consciously Awesome adventure starting on January 16th. And that is a program, a community. It is more than a program, which is why I call it an adventure for you right now. But check that out, and I hope you will have an amazing week. And I will see you next week.